Entry 3. Ocean City, Maryland. Saturday, June 27th, 10:31 a.m.
Buckethead sat behind me in the back, and the other two sat up front, the coverman driving the big government Crown Vic. For all the conversation going on, the others might have been mimes. The air conditioner was turned up and the radio was turned off. Exciting. I hope we're not going all the way the hell back to Baltimore. There was more than a 3-hour ride and I had sand in my shorts. No. That was the only word Buckethead said on the ride. I settled back to wait. I could tell that he was a lefty from the bulge his shoulder rig made. He kept me on his right side, which meant that his coat flap would impede me grabbing his piece, and he could use his right hand to block to fend me off while he drew. It was professional and well thought out. I'd have done almost the same thing. What I wouldn't have done, though, was hold on to the leather strap by the door like he was doing. It was the second small mistake he made, and I had to wonder if he was testing me, or whether there was a little gap between his training and his instincts. I settled back and tried to understand this pickup. If this had something to do with the action last week on the docks, if I was somehow in trouble for something related to that, then I sure as hell planned to lawyer up whatever we got wherever we were going. And I wanted a union rep there too. No way this was SOP. Unless it was some homeland thing, in which case I'd lawyer up and call my congressman. That warehouse thing was righteous, and I wasn't going to let anyone say different. For the last 18 months, I'd been attached to one of those interjurisdictional task forces that have popped up everywhere post 9/11. A few of us from Baltimore PD, some Philly and DC guys, and a mixed bag of feds, FBI, NSA, ATF, and a few letter combinations I hadn't seen before. Nobody really doing much, but everyone wanting a finger in the pie in case something juicy happened. And by juicy, I mean career beneficial. I kind of got drafted into it. Ever since I had gotten my gold shield a few years ago, I'd been lucky enough to close a higher than average number of cases, including 2 that had loose ties to suspected terrorist organizations. I also had 4 years in the Army, and I knew a little bit of Arabic and some Farsi. I know a little bit of a lot of languages. Languages were never easy. The languages were very easy for me, and that made me a first-round draft pick for the surveillance van. Most of the people we wiretapped jumped back and forth between English and a variety of Middle Eastern languages. The task force seemed like it would be pretty cool, but in reality, it was, they put me on a wiretap in a van, and for most of the last year and a half, I drank too much Dunkin' Donuts coffee and just felt my ass grow flat. Supposedly a group of suspected low-level terrorists with tenuous links to fundamentalist Shiites were planning on smuggling something in that we were told that they were potential bioweapons. No details provided, of course, which makes surveillance a bitch and largely a waste of time. When we, meaning us cops, tried to ask them, meaning, the big shots from Homeland, what we were looking for, we were stonewalled. Need to know basis. That sort of thing tells you everything about what we're doing is not at all safe. Truth is that if they tell us, then we might play too significant a role in their arrest, which means they get less the credit. It's what got us in trouble with 9/11, and as far as I can tell, it really hasn't gotten much better since. Then this past Monday I caught a little bit of back and forth from a cell phone we were spooking. One name popped up. A Yemen national named El Muhajid, who was a pretty big fish in the terrorist pond and was on Homeland's must-have list, and the guy talking about him spoke as if El Muhajid was somehow involved in whatever the crew in the warehouse was cooking. El Muhajid's name was on all the DHS lists, and in that van I had nothing to do but read, so I read those lists over and over. Because I rang the bell, I got to play when the takedown was scheduled for Tuesday morning. 30 of us in black BDUs with Kevlar body and limb pads, helmet cams, and full SWAT kit. The whole unit was split into 4-man teams. 2 guys with MP5s, a point man with a ballistic shield and a Glock 40, and 1 guy with a Remington 870 pump. I was the guy with the shotgun. and when we hit Portside Warehouse hard and fast, coming in every door and window in the place. Flashbangs, snipers in the surrounding buildings, multiple entry points, and a whole lot of yelling. Domestic shock and awe. And the idea is to startle and overpower so everybody inside would be too dazed and confused to offer violent resistance. Last thing we wanted was an OK corral. My team had the back door, the one that led out to a small boat dock. There was a tidy little cigarette boat there. Not new, but sweet. While we waited for the go, no-go, the guy next to me, my buddy Jerry Spencer from DCPD, kept looking at the boat. I bent close and I hummed the Miami Vice theme and he grinned. He was about to retire and the boat probably looked like a ticket to paradise. The go came down, everything suddenly got loud and fast. We blew the steel deadbolt on the back door and went in, yelling for everyone to freeze, to lay down their weapons. I've been on maybe 15 or 18 of these things in my time with Baltimore PD, and only twice was anyone stupid enough to draw a gun on us. Cops don't hot dog it, and generally neither do the bad guys. It's not about who has the biggest balls, it's about overwhelming force so that no shots are ever fired. I remember when I went through the TAC team training, the commander had a quote from the movie Silverado made into a plaque and hung it up on the training hall. I don't want to kill you, and you don't want to be dead. I think Danny Glover said that. And that was pretty much the motto. So usually the bad guys stand around looking freaked out and everyone bleats about how innocent they are and yada yada. This wasn't one of those times. Jerry, who was the oldest man on the task force, was point man, and I was right behind him with two guys at my back when we kicked the door in. We hustled down a short corridor lined with framed inspection certificates and then broke left into a big conference room. Big oak table with at least a dozen laptops on it. Just inside the door was a big blue phone booth-sized container standing against the wall. 8 guys in business suits seated around the table. "Freeze!" I yelled. "Put your hands above your head and that's as far as I got before all 8 guys suddenly threw themselves out of their chairs and pulled guns. OK corral, no doubt about it. When IAD asked me to recollect how many shots I fired and who exactly I fired them at, I laughed. 12 guys in a room, everyone's shooting. If they're not dressed like your buddies, and you can, to a reasonable degree of certainty, determine that they're not civilian bystanders, you shoot and duck for cover. I fired the Remington dry and then dropped it so I could pull my Glock. I know the .40 is standard, but I've always found the .45 to be a little bit more persuasive. They say I dropped 4 hostiles. I don't notch my guns, so I'll take their word for it. I bring it up, though, because one of them was the 13th man in the room. Yeah, I know I said that there were 8 of them and 4 of us, but during the firefight, I caught movement to my right and saw the door to the big blue case hanging loose. Its lock was ripped up by gunfire. The door swung open and a man staggered out. He wasn't armed, so I didn't fire on him. Instead, I concentrated on the guy behind him who was tearing up the room with a QBZ-95 Chinese assault rifle, something I'd only ever seen in magazines. Why he had it and where the hell he found ammunition for it, I never did find out, but those rounds punched a line of holes right through Jerry's shield and he went down. "Son of a bitch!" I yelled, and put 2 in the shooter's chest. Then this other guy, the 13th guy, he comes crashing right into me. Even with all that going on, I thought, drug addict. He was pale and sweaty, stank like raw sewage, and had a glazed, bug-eyed stare. Sick bastard even tried to bite me. The Kevlar pads on my sleeve saved my gun arm. "Get off!" I screamed and gave him an overhand left that should have dropped him, but all it did was shake him loose. He blundered past me towards one of the other guys on my team who was blocking the door. I figured he was making for that sweet cigarette boat outside, so I pivoted and parked 2 in his back, quick and easy. Blood sprayed the walls and he hit the deck and skidded 5 feet before coming to a rest in a motionless sprawl against the back door. I spun back into the room and laid down cover fire so I could pull Jerry behind the table. He was still breathing. The rest of my team kept chopping the whole room up with automatic gunfire. I heard gunfire coming from a different part of the warehouse and peeled off to the pack to see what was happening. I found a trio of hostiles in a nice shooting blind laying down a lot of fire with one of the other teams. I popped a few of them with the last couple of rounds in my mag and dealt with the third hand-to-hand. Suddenly the whole thing was over. In the end, 11 alleged terrorists were shot, 6 fatally, including the cowboy with the Chinese assault rifle and the biter I nailed in the back, who, according to his ID, was named Jihad Mustafa. We just started going through IDs when a bunch of federal types in unmarked black fatigues came in and stole the whole show, and it kicked everyone else out in the street. That was okay with me, because I wanted to check on Jerry. Turned out none of our team was killed, though 8 of them needed treatment, mostly for broken ribs. Kevlar stops bullets, but it can't stop foot-pounds of impact. Jerry had a cracked sternum, and he was just one hurting pup. The EMTs had him on a gurney, but he was awake enough to wave me over before they took him away. "How you feeling, dude?" I asked, squatting next to him. "Old and sore, but tell you what, steal me that cigarette boat, and I'll feel young and spry." "Sounds like a plan. I'll get right on that, Pops." He ticked his chin toward my arms. "How's your arm? The EMT said that fruitcake bit you." "Nah, it didn't even break the skin." I showed him. It's just a bad bruise. They took Jerry away and I started answering questions, some of them for the feds and the unmarked BDUs. Javad hadn't been armed and I drilled him in the back, so there would be a routine investigation, but my lieutenant told me it was a no-brainer. That was Tuesday morning and this was Saturday morning. So why was I in a car with 3 feds? They weren't talking. So I sat back and waited.